He sat there alone. A cold wind brushed through the New York air, rustling leaves at his feet as people hurried past without a glance. On a worn wooden bench at the corner of Bowery and East 4th Street, Johnny Depp sat, not as Captain Jack Sparrow, not as the Hollywood icon, but as a man swallowed by silence. His brown leather jacket looked worn, almost tired. A faded gray scarf hung loosely around his neck, barely fighting the November chill. His fingers, still adorned with silver rings, trembled slightly as they clutched a crumpled photo, a memory frozen in time. No bodyguards, no paparazzi, just him and the storm inside. It wasn't just a bad day, it was the day everything cracked. 6 months earlier, Los Angeles, California, back in the heart of LA. Johnny's life looked like what fans thought it was. Movie sets, hotel suites, but off-screen it had been a slow collapse. Behind closed doors his phone remained silent. No scripts, no offers, no friends checking in, not even old ones who once toasted champagne in his name. The lawsuits, the tabloids, the betrayals, they hadn't just cost him roles. They had cost him belief in people, belief in truth, belief in himself. One night, he stood by the window of his rented apartment, a glass of red wine untouched in his hand. City lights blinked outside, mocking his insomnia. On the table sat a letter, handwritten. Torn at the corner, it was from his daughter Lily Rose. "Dad, I love you, but I need space. You're not the same. I hope you find peace." The words burned deeper than any headline. Back to New York 1 week before the photo was taken, Johnny had taken a quiet flight to New York. No entourage, no announcements. He wanted to disappear in a city where everyone's too busy to care. He checked into a modest hotel downtown using a false name. The manager recognized him anyway. "Don't worry," the man whispered, sliding the keys. "No one needs to know." Johnny just nodded. His shoulder-length hair hung messily, as if combed by fingers, not brushes. His beard had grown in patches. Sleep came rarely, food even less. Each morning he wandered the streets with no direction. A cafe near Sip Street became his safe spot. The waitress, a middle-aged woman named Gloria, never asked for autographs. She just brought him coffee. Black, hot, silent, like he liked it. One day she finally asked, "You okay, Mr. Depp?" He stared at her, eyes bloodshot but kind. "No," he said quietly. "But I will be." She never asked again. She didn't need to. The night before the viral photo, it rained that night. Not the dramatic thunderstorm kind, just a cold drizzle enough to make the city glisten. Johnny had skipped dinner again. Instead, he walked through Washington Square Park with an old notebook under his arm. It was filled with sketches, song lyrics, lines of poetry he never showed anyone. As he passed a street violinist, he paused. The melody was haunting, like a memory trying to find its way home. He sat nearby, pulled out the notebook, and wrote, "Sometimes the loudest pain is the one no one hears." He didn't know someone was watching. A young photographer named Illy Navarro, barely 24, was out looking for moody shots of the city. He saw Johnny, soaked, quiet, lost in thought, and instinctively snapped a picture. No flash, no sound. Just a frozen moment, a man on a bench, head bowed, the world unaware. Eli didn't even realize who it was. Not until hours later. The morning the world saw it at 8:12 a.m. the next morning, Ely posted the photo to his Instagram with a simple caption. "Sometimes, even the brightest stars sit in the shadows." The internet exploded. Is that Johnny Depp? Why does he look so broken? This can't be real. Is he okay? Within hours, news outlets picked it up. New photo of Johnny Depp raises concern about actor's mental health. Fans rally behind Depp after emotional viral image. Some called it art, others called it tragic. But no one knew the story, not the real one. Johnny didn't know either. Gloria was the first to show him. She walked over, phone in hand, hesitant. "Johnny, this is all over the internet, it's you." He blinked, confused. She turned the screen toward him. He stared at the photo. Himself, on that bench, clutching his notebook. He didn't remember looking that empty. Silence. Then he let out a quiet laugh. Not the joyful kind, the kind people make when something hurts too much to cry over. "So that's what broken looks like," he said. Gloria placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You don't look broken. You look human." Later that night, Johnny sat back at the same bench, this time under clearer skies. Eli Navarro, the photographer, approached, nervous, respectful. "I didn't mean to violate your space, sir," he said. "I didn't even know it was you. I just saw something in that moment. Something I couldn't ignore." Johnny looked at the young man. For a second, the old fire flickered in his eyes. "You captured what I was too afraid to admit," he said. Eli handed him a printed copy of the photo. "No one saw you like this. I think they needed to." Johnny took the photo, looked at it again, this time with less pain, more acceptance. "Maybe," he said, "maybe it's time they did." To be continued in Part 2, where Johnny finally confronts his past, revisits broken relationships, and faces a surprising visitor who brings a message that changes everything. The photo had gone viral, millions had seen it, thousands had commented, but only Johnny knew the real weight behind it. It wasn't about fame, it wasn't about pity. That image, Him alone, staring into the storm of his own thoughts, was a mirror he couldn't ignore anymore. For the first time in months, he didn't feel invisible. New York City. 2 days later, Johnny sat in the same cafe, in his usual spot near the window. Gloria, the quiet waitress, brought over his coffee, her hands slightly shaking. She placed the cup down and looked at him with warm but uncertain eyes. "There's someone asking about you," she said quietly. Johnny's brow furrowed. "Press?" She shook her head. "No, someone from before." Before, that word felt loaded. It could mean anything. A director, an old friend, a family member. Then she leaned in. "Your sister, Christy." Johnny went silent. It had been over a year since they spoke. Their last conversation ended with doors slammed, not literally but emotionally. She had begged him to slow down, to let go of the lawsuits, to stop drowning in wine and memory. And he had yelled, loudly, unfairly. Gloria handed him a note. It simply read, "I'm not here to judge. I'm here because I still believe in you." He clenched the note in his gloved hand, the same one that had once penned autographs for adoring fans. His fingers trembled. "Tell her I'll meet her tomorrow," he said softly. That night, a memory floods in the small hotel room that had become his sanctuary. Johnny sat with his notebook open. He flipped through pages he barely remembered writing, lyrics, sketches, scribbled lines like, "You can't run from ghosts if you're the one who invited them in." He stared at a sketch. A small house with a porch. It was the home they grew up in, Virginia. Dirt roads, an old truck, a father who left too soon. A mother who loved hard but hurt harder. He remembered Christy holding his hand when he was barely 6, whispering, "We're gonna make it out of this one day." And they had. He became a star. But somewhere along the way, he lost the little boy who just wanted to be safe. The reunion. Johnny walked into a quiet diner in Brooklyn. It was nearly empty, just a couple of tables filled with students and night owls. At a corner booth, Christy Depp sat, older now, but still with that same piercing gaze that had always seen through him. He hesitated at the door. She looked up. Their eyes met, no words at first, just silence. Then she stood, walked toward him, and pulled him into a hug. A long one. He didn't fight it. For the first time in a long time, he let someone hold him. "I thought I lost you," she whispered. "You almost did," he replied, voice breaking. They sat down. The waitress poured coffee. No cameras, no noise. Just two siblings, one broken, the other refusing to let him stay that way. "I saw the photo," she said finally. "It wasn't just sad, it was honest. And I know how hard that is for you." Johnny nodded. "It felt like the world saw me without the mask." She smiled gently. "Maybe it's time to stop wearing one." Later that evening, back in the hotel, Johnny stared at the printed photo again. Eli had given him a physical copy. Glossy frame. He placed it against the wall, just above the nightstand. It wasn't vanity. It wasn't a trophy. It was a reminder, this is what truth looks like. Then he turned to his notebook and began writing again. Not poems, not songs, but a letter. "To Lily Rose, I don't know if this will reach you, but I hope it does. I'm sorry. Not for what the world said, but for how I let it all get louder than your voice. I was fighting so hard to prove I wasn't a monster that I forgot to stay a father. I miss you, every day, and I want to be better. Not for the world, but for the little girl who once painted my nails and called me a pirate king. Love always, Dad." He folded the letter, placed it in an envelope, and wrote just 2 words on the front. "To my daughter." Eli returns the next morning. Eli knocked at the hotel. He hadn't expected to be invited up. Johnny welcomed him in, offered coffee. "You made me a mirror," Johnny said. "But I think we can make something more." Eli looked confused. "I want to do something with that photo. Not for press. For purpose. Let's create a small exhibit. One that tells a story people aren't hearing. About pain, healing, silence, hope." Eli's eyes lit up. "You'd let me?" "I'd help you," Johnny replied. "There are thousands of people feeling what I felt on that bench. Maybe this can help them feel seen." The exhibit planning begins. They found a small art space in Soho, nothing fancy. Brick walls, dim lights, perfect acoustics. Johnny gave Ellie permission to use not just the photo, but pages from his notebook, raw sketches, letters, fragments of broken poetry. He titled the exhibit, "Still Human." It wasn't about him. It was about everyone who's ever felt discarded, forgotten, misunderstood. The phone call that night. As Johnny lay in bed, the hotel phone rang. But something inside told him to pick up. "Hello." A familiar voice responded, soft, hesitant. "Hi, Dad." His breath caught in his throat. "Lily." Silence. Then, "I got your letter. And I'm glad you're still fighting." A tears welled up in his eyes. "I never stopped," he whispered. "I just got tired of swinging alone." She paused. "Maybe next time, let me swing with you." The day had arrived. The gallery lights flickered on, one by one, as the cold morning sun stretched through the windows of the Soho exhibit space. Johnny stood silently in the middle of it all. Framed photos, raw journal pages, faded sketches, and one cracked leather chair placed under a spotlight. It resembled the same park bench from the now famous photo. He had curated every detail alongside Eli. This wasn't a comeback. It wasn't a publicity stunt. It was a confession, in the form of art. He looked down at himself. Brown leather jacket, faded grey scarf, black jeans, silver rings, messy shoulder-length hair, beard unshaved, worn leather boots, no costume, no makeup, just Johnny, still human. The doors opened. By noon a slow stream of guests began to fill the gallery. Most didn't speak at first, they just wandered, reading the captions, absorbing the emotion behind each piece. One frame showed a page with the quote, "Pain doesn't need to be shouted. Sometimes, it just needs to be heard." Another showed his handwritten letter to Lily Rose, edited, anonymized, but still raw. Visitors stood in front of the photo that started it all. Johnny on the bench alone, drenched in emotion and rain. Some wept, some stared, some simply stood in silence. Eli, standing near the corner, watched Johnny from afar. He wasn't the man he'd first photographed. He was still broken. But now he was bravely broken. Unexpected visitors. Christy was the first to arrive. Again she walked up, hugged him tightly, and said only one word, "Proud." Then came Gloria, the waitress from the cafe, carrying a small bouquet of flowers and a simple note, "To the man who reminded the world that even pirates have hearts." He smiled gently. "You didn't have to." She smiled back. "Neither did you. But you did." But nothing prepared him for what came next. The girl in the hoodie. At first, he thought he was imagining things. In the corner of the gallery stood a young woman with a hoodie over her head, her arms crossed, eyes fixed on the bench replica under the spotlight. She looked like a stranger. Until she turned. His breath caught. Lily Rose. She stepped forward slowly. No press, no cameras, just a daughter facing the man who once raised her like a princess, and then vanished into the smoke of scandal and silence. "Hi," she said. Johnny blinked. I didn't know you'd come." "I didn't either," she whispered. "But then I saw the letter, and the photo. And I saw you." They stood there, the world blurring around them. "I wasn't the father you deserved," he said quietly. "But you're trying to be the man I remember," she replied. A pause. Then she gently reached for his hand. "I missed you." He choked back tears. "I never stopped missing you." They sat on the bench together as the gallery buzzed behind them. Johnny and Lily sat side by side on the bench replica. The very scene that had gone viral. This time he wasn't alone. This time the silence between them wasn't empty, it was healing. Visitors noticed but didn't approach. Even Eli stepped back, understanding that this moment wasn't for the camera. It was for them. Later that night the exhibit closed around 10 p.m. Johnny stood under the night sky, breathing in the cold New York air, just like he had when the photo was taken. Only this time he was lighter. Lily walked beside him, holding his arm. "You know," she said, smiling slightly, "Mom would have hated this gallery." Johnny laughed. "Oh, absolutely. She would have called it moody nonsense." They both chuckled, and for a moment, just a moment, it felt like the past wasn't lost, just evolving. The final letter back at the hotel. Johnny sat one last time at the desk, opened his notebook and wrote, "To anyone who ever felt unseen, you're not invisible. You're not broken beyond repair. You're not alone. You're just human, and that's enough." He signed it. JD. 6 months later, the Still Human exhibit toured 5 cities, not for money, not for fame, but for people. People who had suffered in silence, people who had lost their voices, people who found theirs again in a photo of a man they thought they knew, now finally seen as he really was. Johnny didn't return to blockbuster films. He didn't need to. Instead, he wrote a book, quiet, raw, honest. It opened with just one line, "This photo went viral, but I went real."